But before we begin, a brief word from TATV.
The following school meeting is being broadcast live on TATV Channel 3 as part of TATV's Election Coverage 2008. Now, this whole event, sponsored by the Academic Commons, surrounds the theme of the U.S. presidency. Before we start, please know that the Academic Commons will be open on the night of the election, Tuesday, November 4th, which is coming up, so mark it on your calendars, from 7 to 11 p.m. for an election night party. Also, TATV will be broadcasting live from the Saco City Hall for the entire election night to bring you the results and in-depth interviews with local, state, and national candidates, and will occasionally join for the reactions by political watchers here at TA as well. So please join us as we watch one of the most important elections of our lifetime and our history. Please join me in welcoming the moderators of today's event, Alexis Simonetti and Tyler Bashar. Hello, I'm Justin Schnedt, and I'm joined with the Maine Speaker of the House, Glenn Cummings. Welcome to Thornton.
Thanks, Justin. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with what specifically have you done as Maine Speaker of the House?
Well, first of all, just the role of Speaker is kind of interesting. Unlike being like a majority leader or minority leader, you're not necessarily just the spokesman for your party, but you're a spokesman for the Maine House of Representatives. So when I was elected to the speakership in 2006, one of my big goals was to make sure that the two parties operated well together. Obviously, they weren't going to agree on everything, but that both parties felt that they were fairly represented, that people got a chance to speak, and that I did a few little things like invite the Republicans into all the chairs meetings in the morning that they really appreciated, and it felt that that was an important thing for them to feel like they were participating in government, like they were not just there as a say no party, but they were there to actually make decisions. I think that was tremendous. So as a result of that, one of the big achievements was just being able to do a bipartisan budget in which two-thirds of both House and Senate supported, which is a terrific achievement. We hadn't done that in a few years, and I think it was an important statement. Secondly, we were able to pass one of the largest bond packages in Maine history, with roads and bridges and transportation being funded, community colleges and universities being funded, and with water, sewage, that kind of thing, and also some business and economic development package that was tremendous. So we were able to pass an enormous amount, and I don't want to give myself too much credit for that, but I certainly tried to say that there was a tone of let's work together, therefore, and then the legislators went out, took that tone, and I think we were able to create some fantastic piece of legislation. I personally also passed some predatory lending bills, which was very significant to me, and I think ultimately the state. I didn't know at the time there would be such an economic sort of disaster out there that was related in great part to this kind of unfortunate lending practices. So passing that big sweeping bill was something that I feel tremendously proud of.
As you know, we're facing one of the greatest economic crises since the Great Depression. Millions of Americans are losing their homes to foreclosures. Banks are squeamish to provide services such as loans. And recently, the federal government just granted $700 billion in a rescue package. Do you believe that bailout was the right direction to go, and will it affect Mainers?
I believe it's the right direction, not the perfect direction. There needed to be stipulations, which I think both parties wanted to see in the bill, saying don't give the money to, make it impossible to give that money to the CEOs, many of whom led us into some of these crises, and then regulations about future ongoing credits and about credit distribution and about how financial operations happen, financial decisions happen. So I think that some level of that plan on a policy level is important, but on a symbolic level, what's particularly important is that the federal government will not stand back and watch the credit shrink up. The biggest issue really is that if you stand back and don't do anything, then the result, there'll be a contraction, and then I think a perspective is, the House Republicans in Congress certainly had this perspective, is that it will end up resolving itself from an economic point of view. But in the meantime, that could take months, maybe even several years. In the meantime, when that credit crunch happens and you can't expand, you can't grow, then all of us begin to feel that. More unemployment rises, fewer businesses out there, inventories stock up, all those things happen. So what you've seen is once the thing was passed, once the package was passed, I think you've seen a little bit more confidence, especially when they restructured the package to go directly to banks. So the answer is yes. Is it a perfect piece of legislation? Do I wish we were spending $700 billion on health care policy or higher education or tax relief for the middle class? Yes, I would prefer that. But I think the bottom line is we're in a situation where it's crisis. There's a hole in the roof. You've got to fix that hole.
Let's talk about question one, the people's veto. Would you support raising beverage taxes in order to pay for Dirigo?
I would, and I do. I think, first of all, some of those beverages are clearly linked to some health problems. I think that makes sense. I think access to health care in this country is at crisis proportion. I have two attorneys next to me who work for themselves. They say the only thing worse than having no health care at all is paying to have no health care. They are paying premiums of almost $1,000 a month. And they have a deductible of $10,000. I mean, they are paying large tracts of money basically to be able to say they're insured when in fact it doesn't feel like they are. So we have a major crisis. The 18,000 people who are now dependent on Dirigo need a stable funding source, and that's, I think, a good way to do it.
As a former educator, do you support the governor's school reorganization plan?
I think consolidation of administrative back-end services is essential. I think you've got to try to consolidate your human resources, your business departments, your administrative functionings, try to reduce your special ed, try to do special ed and transportation regionally if you can. I think those all make sense. As a person who grew up in a relatively small Maine town, city, I am concerned about loss of local control, but I think you can have both. I would certainly support a plan that allows some local autonomy and input, but consolidate your back-end overhead, because overhead is costing us a lot of money. Our administrative costs are quite high. So I think there's a way that you can strike a balance between both, but I do applaud the governor for trying to find the places where we could save some money administratively.
Why do you support Senator Barack Obama for president?
Most importantly, I think he opens back up the American dream. We've seen a lot of things taken away from those of us who grew up in working-class families in terms of hope and opportunity, harder to get into college, less likely to get health care, seeing reductions in good-paying jobs. All of those things are hurting the American middle class. He's saying, I'm going to start my tax policy with the middle class, I'm going to start my health care policy with the middle class, I'm going to start my energy policy with helping out all Americans. I think those are the kind of things that we desperately need. And if America is to keep its promise to the world and to itself, we must have that American dream of those who want to succeed and be capable. Hard work should pay off, and we haven't seen that in the last 8 years. We're hoping that it will see that in a future president of President Obama.
As you've seen here at Thornton Academy, young people are energized in this election. How crucial is the youth vote, particularly in this 2008 presidential election?
Well, that's a really good question. It's wonderful to have such good questions from people like you, Justin. And we just had a tremendous forum here, which the questions from the students, over 400 questions submitted by the students. It's a great statement that they are participating, they're paying attention. It's fantastic. I think there could not be a more important election for youth. There are a whole bunch of policy issues that will affect them. I hope that they get involved in this campaign. If they can't vote, I hope they get involved in a volunteer basis. But most importantly, if they can participate in any way, I think it's fantastic, because it's really ultimately them that will affect experience more of the impacts in many ways.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks. And remember to become aware with issues of the day, get involved in your community, and vote on the November 4th general election. And keep it tuned to TATV for your #1 source for local politics, covering the presidential race and any local and state race as well. I'm Justin Schnedt. See you next time. Perfect. Covered everything.
Don, you are good.
Thank you.
You're so good.
Thank you.